Welcome to Creative Block. We're your host, V.
And Sean. We interview people in creative industries about their life, work, and hobbies while we doodle jam.
We ask people on Twitter and Instagram. We are on Instagram and YouTube. We do the announcement on YouTube as well now. We're so high tech. If they had specific topics they wanted us to discuss, as well as some drawing prompts.
Today, we have with us April, Pinkie, David.
Hi!
Hey.
Welcome on in. Welcome to Creative Block.
We're so excited to have you. It's really cool to have someone that draws really cartoony. I feel like us cartoony people, we are a select few.
Yeah, I think like right now in the industry, my style of drawing, which is leaning towards comedy stuff, I do all comedy boards, is kind of, I wouldn't say disappearing, just kind of going out of the current fad.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's funny though, because I've heard little whispers that are like, we miss the cartoony in cartoons. So might come back. Might come back.
Yeah, anything we do in animation is something that the viewers want. It's pre-decided by a higher power of what's cool and what we should be selling to people, because I personally think almost nothing goes out of style. We are at such a huge diversity of things that we could be doing, and I feel like fans like every sort of art style ever and every kind of medium, whether it's like comedy or action or what be it, but I don't feel like studios necessarily believe that.
Yeah, I feel like we're always in staggered stages of nostalgia. Like we have like different styles from different eras coming back in different waves at all times. So I definitely feel you on that.
Yeah.
I like to start the show with like the question that's your origin story basically. And how did you figure out that you could work in animation? Kind of like, what was the moment you were like, oh, this is a path and I can follow it?
The first time I knew what storyboards were was I saw some released at Comic-Con that they were talking about some episode of a TV show coming out, and they showed just the boards from it, which I understood the animation process. By the way, when this happened, I wasn't like 12 or 13. I think I was like 20. And I started my career at 22. So I really didn't know what storyboards were until I was immediately doing them, pretty much. And I thought that was the coolest thing, because I didn't even understand the purpose of storyboards. I didn't understand that you were setting blueprints for animators. I didn't understand shot progression or shot framing or any of the important stuff. I just saw really cool drawings that looked cooler to me than the final product, because they were so loose and so fun to look at. And I thought that looks just so damn fun to do. And it's not. It's
it's fun sometimes.
When it's over,
it's so much work.
It's very painful. But when I saw that, I was like, that is the coolest thing ever. I want to do that. And then I spent the next couple years of my life being in complete agony that art school was so expensive and I wouldn't be able to immediately do what I thought was the coolest job ever. But as soon as I saw those Comic-Con boards, I was like, that's the dream. I want to do that. And I also had no understanding of how storyboards work. I thought everything you did would be on a big screen at Comic-Con with a ton of fans standing around. Like, you did the entire storyboards for this episode, and then they got to show it in front of an audience of people who oohed and awed and clapped. In reality, you show it in front of like a couple of people when you're pitching something, and one of them says, I don't get it, and the other one says, redo it. But in my fantasy world, it was, you got to show these cool things to all these fans, and they screamed when they saw their favorite character, and they're crying and they're cheering, and they're like, those are the coolest drawings ever. And they're posting it on Twitter, and they're like, the new episode leak came out, they premiered it at Comic-Con, it's so cool.
So you had the dream of like a rock star animator, like, you come out and they're like chanting, they're like, yes, Pinkie, Pinkie, and you're like, wait till you see these key poses, folks.
That's
Yeah,
so funny.
that
Yeah.
understanding, I was a theater kid in high school, but I was also an artist, and I thought that was the dream, is that I could show on stage, which I guess in a way millions of people have seen my work, my gags, but it's not as gratifying as that they know it's me and I'm getting the credit for this concept was done by Pinkie. Like, it doesn't just like flash on screen and I come out and take a bow or something, you know. It's but so in a way I was kind of right, but it's definitely not as it's not the dream of you're on this huge stage at Comic-Con and people are cheering. It's for very select moments in very specific TV shows. I think like maybe like one in a billion would get that kind of chance
I
to be applauded like that for storyboards,
I think
not
so,
making the whole
yeah.
entire show.
I think that's really right. What you're saying is that there has been a little bit of a moment when like for storyboards we were kind of there was a moment when a couple of shows had kind of like starboard artists, you know, like it was like,
Yeah.
ooh, these are like the hot shots. But it's very few and far between. There's only like a couple of shows and a couple of people who got that status, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember it during like Steven Universe and Adventure Time
Yes. Yes.
was like people were looking up the
Yeah.
names of the storyboard artists and they were all getting really big on Instagram or Tumblr
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
whatever it was.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, I remember that. It's funny because, you know, like cartoons is kind of like a way to just to get a little flavor of popularity, but you're still pretty like in the shadows, right? You're like, ooh, appreciate the work I put out without looking at me at all, kind of thing.
Well, luckily, I mean, in fandom sphere, it's not like that.
Mm,
Like with SpongeBob, there are people who recognize how characters are drawn just by the artist. Like they see the artist's style and they go, "That one was Pinkie." And I've had
mm.
people like call me out on Twitter, like a screenshot of something like "classic Pinkie pose" or something. I'm like, I don't even know what
That's
that means.
cool. That's really
That's
cool.
dope. So you're getting a little taste of that. You're getting a little.
Mhm.
Yeah, I drew it, and I know that way with my coworkers. Like I can recognize my coworkers' art styles immediately. I know what they're like, what they're the gags that they pitch, and I know exactly what it looks like. But it's weird to see it from a completely separated perspective, a fan recognizing just from social media and
Mhm.
gathering what our style language is. But I only see that in fandom space because smaller projects or ones that don't have as dedicated of a fandom of something like SpongeBob, that's such a huge IP that people have been following since the 90s. Uh, Nobody really cares. They'll love the storyboards. People love to see them regardless, but they're not fans of certain artists. Like you said, like Steven
Mhm.
Universe definitely yielded that, and sometimes in my perspective, almost a harmful way of people kind of. I don't think that when you're doing something so loose and also so misunderstood that it should be witnessed and critiqued by such a large fandom, because the concept of wording is that you are creating something that's not final, and when you take it as
Yeah.
final, it's there's a huge disconnect, unfortunately, with fandom space and what we do. And I tried my best on SpongeBob to not be an educator, but share the reality of certain things, because I think that people see storyboard to final. Like I got a comment on one of my social media posts. I posted something I boarded entirely from scratch, and one of the comments says the storyboards are better than the final.
Oof,
Well,
yeah.
the final can exist without the storyboard, so I don't know what you mean by that. It's the same thing.
It's funny because I've seen comments like that every now and
Hmm.
then, and it's kind of like it's it's I don't know. I think it's a very funny kind of comment to see. Yeah, it's very funny. But you know,
Yeah.
talking about educating and kind of like sharing what the reality is behind the scene. We were just talking about you in Comic Con, seeing the storyboards, been really excited by that. But then you told us like, art school's too expensive. So what did you do? What was your what was
So
your next step?
I ended up where I am not entirely on purpose, but purposefully at the same time. I really wanted to be a storyboard artist in TV animation. Actually, my dream show was SpongeBob, and that was the first one I ever worked on. But
That's so
when
cool.
I got
So like,
into the industry, what I was doing for a living was, well, first I was working like 3 jobs. I started to go to community college for graphic design because at the time I had been living in Virginia and there aren't art programs unless you go out of state college. I had my dad's post 9/11 military GI Bill, and that could pay for some of it. But my dad, bless his heart, he was correct. He spent a lot of his GI Bill getting the master's degree and for himself. And you might guess that, well, maybe wait until your child is of age to go to college to see if you want to use your GI Bill on them. I was terrible all through high school. Absolutely not his fault for spending all the money on himself. I would have done the same thing if I was my own child. So I didn't have the funds to, like, I just had enough to go to community college, and I thought, well, I'll just go to community college for a while. It's a graphic design program, which I talked to the counselor, does not translate to animation school. I could not take that and go to like SVA or SCAD or something. I would have to, it would knock away some of the like English and math credits, but I would have to be spending like an additional 3 years in college. So I would have been in college for like 5 or 6 years. At that point, I should be allowed to do surgery. But I had been going to community college classes, and at the time, I did have a large following on social media, which I was very lucky to be able to actually quit my minimum wage jobs and make money full time doing art commissions, which I mostly did on Twitch. I would stream like 6 hours a day or like a regular shift at work, and just anyone who pops in, send me money, I'll draw what you want and immediately email it to you. It was immediate turnaround. I did the convention circuit. I drove all around the Eastern United States, boothing at conventions, selling my work there. I did it traditionally and digitally, where I set up a screen HDMI to my Cintiq so people could see me drawing as they walked by at the convention. And
that's so
that was,
cool. That's
yeah,
so
it
cool,
is.
dude.
That's dope.
I highly
Yeah.
recommend that setup to anyone. If you have a crappy like 13-inch TV, plug in an HDMI cable to your Cintiq. Because I hate, one thing I hate is people at conventions wanting to loom over my shoulder while I'm
Yeah.
working.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
having a crowd stand around your booth and watch you is cool, but having people like lean over you is the worst thing ever. It's like if someone's like standing over you while you're eating a meal. It's not like
yeah.
when you
That
do it.
happens at cafes when I draw at cafes. Like
Yeah.
people like lean over your shoulder and they're like, "What are you drawing?" And I'm like, "Things that aren't gonna, the things that are gonna upset you while you're at your meal with your kid. Don't look
And I
at this."
don't mind
And some
people
people just
watching.
like will offer unsolicited comments to you. I don't know if you ever get that, but like,
Oh yeah, I did conventions. There's a lot of very weird things that happen at conventions. There's a lot of social disconnect from the real world and people who are going outside for the very first time. And like, God bless them, some of the sweetest people, coolest people you'll ever meet, but some of the worst interactions you will ever have with other human beings, and it's embarrassing on both ends. There's
oh.
no way to get through a convention without some pain, but very fun.
I do
And
want to kind of like ask a little bit, just because you said you were able to quit your minimum wage job while you were doing stuff on Twitch. And I think that's really, really interesting because not only did you treat Twitch like a day job, because you said you were like on it from like 9 to 6 but you were able to make how I want to put a pin in that a little bit and talk about it more, just to kind of like maybe that will give
yeah,
ideas to other people out there, and it's a great way to keep like honing in your craft. So can you tell us a little bit, like, was it like how much better than the minimum wage was it, and how many drawings a day did that look like what was that like?
well, I wasn't on my feet all day, so that was nice. But I I did the math on it, and it's something I had to do because not to convince myself, but to convince my mother that I
Mm,
wasn't just dropping my mall jobs just to doodle all day.
mm,
Which my parents have always been supportive of that. My mom's actually an artist herself and was an art teacher most of my childhood. But I had done some long streams on days that I was off, and I would I was pretty flexible with my pricing, so it's really hard to estimate. I do some like $10 sketches here and there, but if I got a $10 sketch an hour, I was still making more than $7.25, which is minimum wage in Virginia. And
Right,
what
right.
I deducted the commuting to work, because I did not live near work, and it was like a 30-minute commute or so. And all the money I'd also spend on buying lunch in the mall. I'd always go to the food court. It wasn't just my food at home. It wasn't that much more money, but it was proportionally better and made no sense because that's the direction I wanted my career to go in. I felt like when I was at work at the mall, I would still do commissions, but I would do them in the back stock room. I would hide. I'd do them between customers whenever I could. So I was still getting work done. But if I was able to sit down and that's all I did, even if I just got a $10 sketch an hour, some days were better than others. But if I got a couple of like $60 like full color commissions in, I was still doing better than my minimum wage jobs, which even my shifts there weren't guaranteed. It depended on the hours they had every week, but guaranteed every single day, as long as I logged on, turned on the screen, started drawing, I was making money. And it wasn't like the beautiful success story people want to hear. Like, I was making six figures just
Yeah. No, but I think it's really cool because it you know, like I think we have like a couple, there's like a lot of kids like out there right now, they're like struggling to kind of like find a job because animation's weird right now.
Yeah.
So this is like a really interesting thing to explore, you know, like being on like it was an interesting way also to advertise commissions, because I hadn't heard of that model before. Like up until now, I only saw like on Twitter, Instagram, people posting the little like, here's my commission setup. But I think there's something that's really cool about doing it on Twitch the way you were doing it.
Watching it,
Yeah, and I don't
getting
do
it
it
done
that way.
live. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely don't do it that way anymore. I'll do it every once in a while, but it is exhausting.
Yes.
Like
Yeah. Just like a
missing
real
meals,
job.
yeah, missing bathroom breaks, but you have to be entertaining the whole time. It's not just I'm sitting there
Yeah.
drawing. I was engaging people. I was trying to keep conversation up, because what keeps people in and wanting to buy things is having a new topic to keep talking about.
Yeah.
Even if I was just, what's easy is conversations like this. What's hard is me to myself, and there is a chat, but you're like, anyone see the new movie this weekend? And then there's a long pause before anyone does anything. You're like, oh yeah, that was great. It's really weird and awkward, and you have to find a way to fill space, whether it's with music or just nonstop talking about yourself. But that's what I was doing for quite a while. It is tiring. It's also, caveat, I think people think that you can just magically make that kind of following and money on social media, and there is a huge amount of luck that goes into that. A lot of my like networking and socialization with people, and I think my personality plays into it, that I like talking to people, meeting new people, and chatting online. But artists are a relatively introverted crowd most of the time. I think in order to get good at art, you kind of have to like tuck away. And I think the only reason that I really got good at it is because I was a military kid and grew up a little bit rural, and I had the free time. Also, I didn't like to pay attention in class, so I gave myself some of that free time. But I had the time to do that because there was nothing else to do. It's not like I had high-speed internet and all these video games my entire life. That's what I did. But a lot of artists do it just because they are not outgoing, which no shame in that. But it's, in order to get that kind of following, I feel like you have to somewhat enjoy that, or force yourself to put yourself out there a lot. And even if you do that every single day and you're consistent on social media and you're posting all the time, even if you did exactly what I did by going to conventions, advertising your work, talking to people, it still doesn't guarantee it. That's the frustrating thing about anything in our industry. You can do everything right. There is an amount of luck that goes into it. There's a large amount of hard work and talent, and I do believe I got there because of it, but I cannot discredit the amount of luck that I've had. Just, I guess, even just serendipity, right place, right time kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's right, in a way that like everyone's like, you know, there's a factor of luck, but you also have to be prepared, right? You also have to, you know, it's just like the right opportunity, but you also have to be ready, right? So you did all the work, you know what I mean? so that when the opportunity happened, like you were ready for it. I like that you talk about following and like and getting your stuff noticed and all that, like, because I feel like correct me if I'm wrong and let me know if that's okay for me to ask. But like you're a little bit younger than us, right? Like how old are you right now?
I'm 27 in May.
Okay.
I don't know when this is coming out.
Happy birthday very soon.
Yeah.
You're probably gonna be yeah, you're probably gonna be 27 when this comes out. But I
Yeah.
feel like I like to ask this question because I feel like you had social media when it was already hard. You know what I mean? Like I feel like Sean and I, we we kind of we're at the beginning of Instagram, and like the algorithm was so different, and it was in a way a little easier, I guess, to kind of get yourself noticed. Like, so what do you what do you think helped you get a following?
I mean, I was embarrassing on the internet as a teenager. I have never not had an internet presence. And I that's a burden to me, but also a good thing. It means I have a terrible track record of that you could probably find stuff from when I was very young. But it also means that I gathered some people, and I don't know if it's just right place, right time, or there's just good people out there that even in the embarrassing teenager moments, I have people who tell me all the time, I followed you when you were 16. I followed you when you were doing your first commissions. I remember you when you were in this fandom space, and I've loved your work ever since. And I like bless those people who follow me through all walks of life, because I definitely wouldn't have by very awkward faces. But I really don't have like a solid answer for like what went right with me. I think the one thing that I can speak for that went perfectly right for me to land my career was when I wanted it, when I decided I wanted to do storyboards. I geared my art style and my portfolio to that. I studied what storyboards were, what other people were doing. I looked at other portfolios. I asked for critique from people. I talked to people in the industry. I watched videos on YouTube. Toon Boom actually has this is like an unpaid plug, but Toon Boom has amazing like learning videos on both their website and their YouTube. And I learned from the guy who eventually discovered and hired me, which was really
Whoa, that's
surreal
crazy.
and weird. Yeah, and I learned from him in person too when I worked on the show, but I had been watching his videos that he worked with Toon Boom. It's Sherm Cohen, he's a director on SpongeBob. He
Yeah.
worked with Toon Boom to do several instructional videos. His were very helpful to me. I was working really hard at making something professional. So it wasn't just that I had art that was good on the internet. I did make it clear what I wanted. I did make it clear that this is my portfolio for storyboards and character design. And I was really diving hard into character design at the time because I did not have the time to be making full-fledged storyboards. I could not sit down and even make like 2 minutes of footage. I couldn't do that for my portfolio because I can't do that and make money at the same time. That's the struggle everyone in the industry has.
Yeah.
Nobody has time to make the project that you want to make and also make money unless you are sacrificing every second of your day and sacrificing yourself. So I didn't have any solid storyboards actually, but I had really good sequential art. I had stuff that I wouldn't even say really good. If I looked back at my portfolio now, I'd probably throw up. But I think I had potential is what I should say. And I really like it's what I really wanted. It wasn't just that I was posting stuff and someone saw some commissions I was doing and was like, you should work in TV. But at the time, I got an email from Sherm Cohen, who I had learned from with the Toon Boom program. And he said, would you like to freelance for SpongeBob SquarePants? I was freshly 22 and I had never storyboarded before. He asked for initially character designs for an episode. And I wanted that job so damn bad because I was like, this is my one opportunity. I'll never get this ever again. I can't afford art school. I was considering going in debt for the rest of my life. I had many moments where I was like sobbing in my car, calling my friends saying I'm never going to be able to do this because I was not given the silver spoon or the money. And if I did get the money and I did take out a loan, I would be struggling forever, not guaranteed to have a job. I would be paying this off for the rest of my life, and it could be a mistake. And when he emailed me initially, I thought, well, someone's bullshitting me because that's probably not actually Sherm Cohen. That's probably someone using his name. And then I thought about it for a second. I'm like, I don't think anyone's big enough
Some
of an
troll account, yeah.
Yeah. You know what's
to, like-
funny is like Sherm is like he's like an OG, you know? He's like a real
Yeah.
good. I had his he has like a little there was like a PDF that came with like a SpongeBob DVD, I think. It's like how to draw silhouettes correctly so you can really
Yep.
and it's really fucking good. And I remember reading that a bunch of times. But he's not outside of the industry, he's not a big name. People don't really
No,
know
he's
of
not.
him. It's really interesting because he's OG. Yeah, he's like
yeah, I had to think about it. I'm like, if someone were to be pulling my leg and impersonating someone, they're probably going to email me like, "This is George Clooney, and I want to give you $10,000 for you to draw."
I need you to storyboard on SpongeBob. I'm George Clooney.
So I reached out to him and I said, yes, I do character designs. He had a design for an episode that he wanted to see some takes on. And typically with character design stuff, you do like 4 to 6 options of like sketches. This is what the character could potentially look like. And then you get feedback and then you change or solidify whatever you sent to them. I wanted the job so bad. This was my dream job. It just fell into my lap. And I was living in Virginia, nowhere near LA. I didn't have the money to move back to California. I'm from there. And this is like everything I wanted just ended up in front of me. And I'm like, there's no way I am not getting this. This is not going to anyone else. And I sent him back. How many character design sketches do you think I sent him?
Oh, now I want to guess a really high number. Let's see, 36.
I sent him 120.
Are you insane? Oh my god.
Oh my
That's like
God.
literally what he must have been like, bye.
I stayed up all night. I did it in Storyboard Pro because I wanted to prove that I had the program. And
That's so funny.
I did 120. It might be somewhere on my Cintiq. I might still have it. And I just sent over this massive file of here's as many possible options that it was just a background character. I'm sure she was on screen for 3 seconds entirely. And I did 120 different drafts. And then when he got that back, he's like, wow, do you do storyboards? And I think what prompted that is either you're insane enough to do storyboards or you have like whatever endurance it takes to not want to absolutely pass away while you draw that many drawings at once.
Honestly, for real, like 100, like 100 and how many? 106?
120.
120 drawings in a night. That's a storyboard. It's like a third of a like a beat board of an 11-minute, pretty much.
You know what though? that kind of endurance, both for character design and for storyboarding, that is the kind of thing that learning how to do that kind of thing really helps young artists. I think some like one of the biggest things that I feel like young artists have to get over is the idea that you're going to draw something more than once, and that like a lot of people try to draw something once and then they mess it up and then they're like, screw it, you know, I suck, and then they don't draw that thing. And it's like, no, try to draw it again. Like try to draw a different pose of it. Draw like a standard pose where you're designing the character's outfit and the face, and then draw a different one where you're posing it out. Like draw it a bunch of times, you know?
And I feel like it's important to put out there that is something that I would never do ever again. Not unless I'm taking extreme overtime hours. You could not ask me to do that. No, if a studio came up to me and said I want 120 different characters, I'm like, all right, I'm taking weeks to do this and it's gonna cost 91 an hour. You know, that was a whole different world. I was just so desperate to get in.
What if the new movie 120 Dalmatians comes to you and they say, "Listen, we have a lot of dogs, specifically 120 of
Oh
them.
God.
We need to, we need 120 dogs in every shot."
Oh my god. It's like the Loud House, but on steroids.
Well, thank God I minimal do character design stuff now. I enjoy it, but uh character design isn't what I thought it was when I was trying to get into the industry. I thought it was you got to like what I'm talking about, make all these new characters. A lot of character design is clean, tight work
Yep.
and like cleaning up and showing different angles of things that you might not want to show. Let's see it upside down and backwards. Let's see it inside out. I did stuff for when we were in early development of Kamp Koral and I was designing some of the characters on the show. I'd get notes back. It's like, we need to see the inside of this character's mouth. And it's because it's CG and it was something I'd not run into before. It's like, why? And like, oh, we need to see where this like article of clothing, like what the character looks like underneath the clothes and where this connects. And like, are they wearing socks inside the boots? And when you take this off, what's underneath it? Because everything's in whatever layers with whatever model they are making. And I probably sound like I don't know what I'm talking about because I'm not a CG artist.
No, but it is.
And I'm like, all this is in a mouth?
Yeah.
Is this what's inside the mouth? There's just clothes and all this stuff in the mouth.
Could be because I think like anything in animation, especially storyboards, but is the assumption that the viewer and I guess whoever's working on it is stupid. And it sounds really, really mean, especially like discrediting to my peers and coworkers. But it's true because when you're making something, you have to assume that the next person you hand it to knows absolutely nothing. And you need to provide all the information. So there could possibly be boots inside that character's mouth, deep down in the throat. Like their uvula could be a lamp. We don't know about that. We have to show everything so the next person that gets it understands what's going on. And that happens further down the line where now the viewer understands what's going on. So yeah, I get it now, but it was a very weird experience. And thank God I don't do that amount of character design. But when I was asked, when Sherm asked me, do you do storyboards? After I sent him 120 drawings like a maniac, I don't even know if he looked at all of them. He probably saw it once and deleted it and went, that's a psychopath. Put that person on boards.
Yeah, honestly, that sounds about right. It's like you can only get someone who's like a little bit not right in the head to be a board artist.
Right.
It's like it's so much work. It's so much work. You know, I was really happy one day. I think Jorge Gutierrez was like, "Oh yeah, boards is the hardest job. I've done all the jobs, and boards is the hardest." So I'm like, "Thank you." It's fucking hard.
Yeah.
And then sometimes they'll just be like, "Hey, can you like write all the dialogue too?" like on top of all the drawings, they'll be like, "Hey, can you write all the dialogue, or like can you like build? Can you put the sounds in and stuff too? Can you make the animatic? Can you
I've
do
done
the sound
that. I've done it all. Yeah.
Yep.
When he asked me, do you do storyboards? He didn't say, can you do storyboards? He said, do. I said yes, which was a lie. I had never done a real storyboard ever in my life. And I think if I did, I would have probably also said no at that point in my life. I think that I would realize that all of this was very, very hard. But I was handed a board. I was hired as a revisionist, freelancing at least. And I spent an excruciating amount of time trying to get that right. I didn't know what I was doing. I vaguely did because I did learn online and I watched storyboards and I did love it as a medium, but I didn't know everything in Storyboard Pro. I didn't know what like the reframe tool was. I didn't know how to animate the camera. I was not naive enough to think that this is just sequential art. And I didn't understand hookup poses. I was doing really dumb rookie mistakes of like character just flips in kind of things. They're holding something in their hand and then it's gone in 1 second without the character putting it down or showing where the item came from. Very simple rookie mistakes that look horrible when you look like if I were to look back at what I did then, I wouldn't have hired me. But Sherm being just such a kind, patient man, he's just such a great mentor, and he took pity on me. I'm sure he probably wouldn't say it that way, but he took pity on me to say this person has potential, and work with me and like tell me what a hookup pose was. I don't think I would have had the same mercy. Honestly, if I hired a revisionist and I was sent back something without a hookup pose, I'd be like, terrible. Then just move on to the next person.
I feel like
no mercy.
That's so interesting that you mentioned that, because I feel like we need more people like Sherman, in the sense like
Yeah.
this is something in the industry that's kind of a
problem right now.
problem right now.
It's hard.
Like,
It's harder to learn on the job. You have to. You're
yeah.
more people are expected to already
Which
know
Mhm.
I
everything.
entirely learn on the job, which is something I'm proud of now. I don't At the time it wasn't something to be proud of because I had eventually like moved out to Los Angeles. I had worked in the studio and I had days where, and I'm not like a big boohoo crier or anything, but I went to the bathroom and locked myself in a stall and I would just cry because I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm here and I have an apartment and I'm paying rent and I'm commuting to work and I don't know, like I'm gonna hand in something I have no clue what I'm doing. So I would do like unpaid overtime secretly and be working late and trying to get things right. I'd take homework. All I would do would be draw the characters. I just wanted to get it right. But there was a lot of long hours that I wouldn't recommend to any young artist, especially because I feel like their time is valuable. And what I was doing, I was not paid for at all because I was just trying so hard to make I just wanted to make not even really good boards, but just acceptable boards enough to keep me there.
I think,
It was
yeah.
survival.
I think it's tough because we have had an episode with Megan Perez, which was an awesome episode. She worked on South Park, and we were talking about doing overtime, unpaid overtime,
Mm-hmm.
and we've had comments of people being like, we don't really like so much how it seems like it's a thing. And it's like, when you start, it's just hard not to do it because the level required is so high.
Yeah.
I wish I could be like, yeah, don't do any unpaid overtime, but there's that gap. Like, I did unpaid overtime all the time when I started out, just because I just wasn't good enough, and I don't know if there's, I don't know.
It's sort of like the amount of time that it takes for a new artist to do what an experienced artist does.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
requires more time, and you don't want the people that hired you to
Yeah.
think that you're as inexperienced as
Yeah.
you are. So you try to put in the extra time to equal an experienced board artist's work.
Exactly.
And that's the hard
then
balance, man.
now we're at the point in our career where like we can do it no unpaid overtime, and we can do it in the time because we're good enough. We've been doing it for a while now. We know it, and now we're bored because we've been doing it for so long, and it's like we get it. But when you're starting out, god damn it, it's really fucking hard. Like, I wish, I don't know, I wish there was a way to, unless you're just that good, maybe people sometimes they're just that good and it just,
I mean, I don't think anyone knows everything going into it. Like there's gonna be like I didn't know how to animate the camera. I did not know, because why would I know how to animate the camera? But that's what I was doing. I was treading water just to be good enough, and I just to hand things in and meet deadlines, I had to do those kind of hours. Now I could do, and God forbid, no one should know this, but for the sake of other artists, for an it gets better thing, not for someone who should ever expect this kind of deadline from me. I could do 2 minutes of footage in 3 days. I mean, I guess depending on the project, but that's nothing to me. You can hand me a script, I can make you something in a few days. I'm not going to. It's not going to happen in 3 days, but it's definitely doable. I'll take it for the week and I will space it out and enjoy my life. But if I had to, I could and would. But
that's the thing. Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. It's like, it's very, and it's good that you mentioned that, because I remember when I started out in my first job, and I was like, I don't know if I can, I don't know if I can keep doing this. I was like, I don't know if I can keep doing this for another year. I was like, I don't know if I can keep doing, I don't
feel
even
like
know.
You're gonna die, dude.
Yeah,
You feel like it feels crazy.
Yeah, I was like, how the hell are people? Yeah, but it gets better, so that's good. Yeah, it's good to put it out there. It's like it fucking sucks at the beginning.
It does.
Yeah, it really.
You also stop feeling like you have to make all of your storyboards look like the prettiest possible thing.
Yes. Yeah.
You start being able to recognize
Yeah.
exactly like how much information you need to put in
Yes.
to get the joke across. Yeah, I mean, I know that I definitely still have projects where I'm like, all right, I'm gonna flex on this one a little bit.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
like,
yeah.
you know, but most of the time, if it's just like a regular scene and I just have to get through it, then yeah, you know, you just try to do your job, but like, you know, you try not to take it too personally. And by the way, if you guys want to draw your favorite hookup poses, I drew a few hookup poses on page 2.
Oh my
Um
god. I was
that
like,
is
what are these drawings? And now I
it's
know and I love it.
it's just your favorite kissing poses. So I'm
Oh,
just
those are
drawing.
great. That's so funny. I really want to draw on here, but it's lagging so badly for
Oh
me. So
no.
I can't participate right now. Every line I make, it shows up maybe 30 seconds later, and that's
Every
just
line you make, every step you take.
I'll just draw a little box for you, Pinkie. I'll just draw a box, and Sean and I, we can't draw in it. It's just for you.
Okay, wait. I'll be your hands. Describe describe the first character's pose for me a little bit. I'll be your hands here.
oh god. Okay. Um, trying to decide if I want to make you draw SpongeBob because I've been talking about that. Well, we can stay on topic. Let's have a character. It doesn't have to be SpongeBob. Let's have a character trying to draw on a Cintiq and then just smashing it with rage.
Wait, this is a hookup pose?
Oh, that's kind of funny. It's like a rage hookup. What does that mean? That exists, right? That's the thing. People are like, do angry hookups. That's a
Sure.
Okay, so I'll draw the
If you want,
Cintiq.
wait, if you want an angry hookup, then this is gonna make so many people happy. You can draw SpongeBob and Squidward together.
Ooh, yes.
What if I draw two characters both smashing a Cintiq while they kiss?
That's
There you
pretty
go.
Is that a hookup pose? Is that a
Sure.
hookup pose? Yeah, I'm trying to figure out, you know, the best way to translate your raw emotion here, your raw angst.
Yeah, that's what it felt like. But I can't believe where it's almost like blink and you miss it, because it was one day where I remember what it was like seeing my coworkers draw SpongeBob in 2 seconds, and it took me like 2 minutes. And
Yes.
I'd see the amazing things they'd make, and I'd want to make stuff like that, but I just couldn't. And the amount of hours I put in to even produce something close to that, and like you said, the cleaning the storyboards and trying to make everything perfect, that was so hard to let go of, because I wanted people to look at my boards the same way I looked at other people's boards that made me want to get in the industry and say, whoa, those are the best things I've ever seen. But I didn't exactly have the skills
Yeah.
to make things as fluid and interesting and exciting as I do now. So the best thing I could do was make them look really clean and nice, where I was kind of fell towards the fandom side of the internet, where people take screen caps of boards and say, this is so good. But what they meant is it's a good illustration. They didn't know what a good storyboard was.
They're gonna show
And
my stick figures at Comic-Con, and people are gonna boo me off stage.
yeah, but what makes a good storyboard is, like, I think my drawings are good because I think I've reached the point where it's a happy medium between this is on model, it looks good, but it also conveys what I want to convey. And I was sacrificing some of that early on, because I kept making really good poses, really loose stuff stiffer by trying to make it look nicer, because I was worried about like what people on the internet would think, and I was worried about this needs to look really good and on model. I want people to see one frame of it and say this is amazing. And
I agree with that. Oh,
Mhm.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep going. I just think it's just a really good thought, because I do feel like it's something that I've seen on a couple of shows where I've heard people in leadership saying things like, oh, but the internet is going to say this. And it's I mean, not fuck the internet, but kind of fuck the internet.
Oh my God.
You know what I mean? I heard this is a controversial.
There's going to be a news article that comes out that V from Creative Block says fuck the internet. V's anti-internet. V wants to go back, wants to be Amish.
Our lives would be so much better. But really,
No,
if
but
you
I
look,
mean, like, the internet has a right to have opinions. It's good. Talk about anything you want to talk, you know, within reason. But like, you can't make you can't make your work just to make the internet happy. That's just
Yeah. But
crazy.
that was my reality before I worked in TV. And when I
Yeah.
think about it, like perspective wise, if you're focusing on making something like so good so people on the internet enjoy it, even if I had a post go viral, it's not going to hit the same kind of views that an episode of something will, that a good episode will. Like,
Yeah.
I guarantee you, maybe not at this hour, but most of the time you could turn on the TV and find something I worked on airing, that most times of day. And the viewership that gets, we don't see the immediate impact. There's immediate gratification from stuff that I post on the internet. I'm immediately getting likes as soon as I say, here's my storyboards from this episode. I'm getting comments, instant gratification. But what I'm not seeing is the long term, which is a lot of my more experienced peers have seen in the industry. People like me who grew up with like Sherm's work, and then he's hiring me, and I'm saying how impactful things that he did was when he was making that. He was not hearing that kind of feedback from me. He's hearing that like 15 years later, and I have to think of it that way. Where there was one time we got sent an email that said this SpongeBob premiere or whatever got like 2 something million views, and trying to picture what that's like. And I've had several things go viral on TikTok where I've gotten like 10 million views on some of my videos, but my art stuff, like even with my following, if I get like 5,000 likes, that's a good day. And thinking
Mhm.
about like 2 million people just on the premiere, just the first time it airs, not reruns or anything, just the first time that anyone saw it, that many people saw it. And that is just exponentially different. And this isn't like to give anyone who works in television some sort of stage fright or crippling doubt, but it's, the internet isn't as real as the impact of making a good episode, like having a good drawing and being able to post something. It's useful. Sometimes I'll clean certain sections of boards because I'm like, this will be good to post when I need to promote it on social media. But the I lost that or didn't have it when I first started working in the industry. The grand scheme of things was not appealing to me. It was trying to make something that looked really good that someone else had the wow effect with. And now my perspective's changed where I want to be proud of the episode. I want to be proud of it overall and say, this was a really good episode. I think the gags that I did were really funny.
Mhm.
Not looking at the storyboard and saying that's the most beautiful board I've ever seen, but looking at it and saying that was so funny, that was so smart, that was so clever of me. I really like thought about how to like execute something that was in my head or was a joke that someone else pitched. I'm like, well, how do we make this happen? Because most of what I do is making something happen that shouldn't happen,
Hmm.
making it real. And that's the
Mhm.
hardest part of my job. Like I tell everyone that drawing isn't fun. Like people act like drawing's fun and relaxing and something that uh I enjoy the process of. It's not, it's terrible. The end result is great. I love having whatever I visualized come to fruition. I love being able to show someone something, but it's the being able to show someone what's in my head. It's not the execution of it.
That's funny that you mentioned that because I do feel like there's like different types of artists. There's definitely, I feel like I could be wrong, but I feel like sometimes when we had Jonan Vasquez on the show, he said something similar. He was like, I hate drawing. Drawing is painful. It's torture on earth. And
Good.
it's like, and it's kind of funny because for me, I actually I really do enjoy drawing. There's different profiles here. I feel like, like the act of doodling can be really fun. It can be less fun if it's something that you're like, oh, I don't believe in it, or like, I don't think this is the thing I should draw. Then that's like, oh yeah, that's harsh. But hard,
Yeah,
I
but if I
mean.
just wanted to just make beautiful things, I think I'd be an oil painter or
Yeah.
something. That doesn't make
Yeah.
nearly as much money as what I do, but I would just be like, if for the enjoyment sake of it, if paying the bills is out the window, I would be doing beautiful, ornate things if I just enjoyed the process of it. But
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
what I do is being able to produce something to show to other people. Like I think of something really funny that's really good in my head, even if it's just an expression or a pose. So like this would be hysterical if this character reacted this way. There is no way that I could show someone else that unless I'm doing what I'm doing. And I think the drawing is painful part coming from a sequential artist makes a lot of sense too,
Sure.
because So my girlfriend's a stand-up comedian, and she'll go on stage and tell her jokes and get paid. But for me, I say I do the same thing. I work in comedy animation. I have jokes like this all the time for such a large audience, but I'm very similar to a comedian where I have something funny to share with the world, but instead of going up in front of people and saying it, it takes me 1 to 2 weeks to produce the joke, which
Yeah.
is so painful because it's like she could just tell a joke and it's a joke, but for me, you have to wait so fucking
It's like
long
living
to
in
see
slow
what's funny.
motion.
It really is like living in slow motion. I think there's something like, yeah. There's something there about, storyboards is just, they're just hard, man.
I totally understand the
Yeah.
sentiment of like sort of like at this point, like drawing isn't the like maybe when we were younger or something like that, drawing
Oh yeah,
felt
definitely.
like, like, oh my God, I just learned how to draw an eye correctly, and like now I'm gonna do it all the time, like that sort of
Yeah.
thing. For sure. I think that like anytime you take something and turn it into a career where like literally you do, we all of us, we all draw hundreds of pictures a week probably. And so I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, it's definitely worn off probably some of its charm. I still feel that rush when something that was in my head shows up on the page and it's the way that I wanted it and it's a funny joke for
Oh,
sure.
I can't believe it.
Yeah.
I can't believe anything I make. It sounds really superficial and self-absorbed, but I just when I'm making it, I'm laughing to myself. I know what I'm doing. I know what poses I want to use. When you play it back and you see it, I'm like, I just made a fucking cartoon. That's insane. Like I still can't believe like I have that mindset where I'm thinking back to when I was 22 and I was struggling so hard, and like I said, it's like blink and you miss it. I wake up and now I'm just making cartoons and they're good. And I didn't think I'd be there. I thought it would always be a fight, it'd always be a struggle, but and even at like the beginning of the week, looking at a blank panel or like a blank storyboard pro project and thinking I have to make a cartoon out of this, and at the end of the week when you play it, I'm like, holy shit, I just made a fucking cartoon. It's
Yeah.
when you're doing it, I'm just doing work. It's my job. I do it all the time. It's what I'm used to. And every single week, I think I said this to my partner like a couple weeks ago. I never think I'm gonna make it. When I get an assignment, I never think I'm gonna make the deadline. I never think it's gonna be good because you're looking at blank panels. It has to come out of you. Nobody else is making anything
There's
for
a
you.
pressure there for sure.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
then at the end of the week, there's like a certain like ego boost of like, oh yeah, I've done this 100 times. I know what I'm doing. Here you go. Here's the cartoon, and it's good, and I'm excited to show you. But there's like a severe doubt, like halfway through the week. It's not until you're like a day before you're gonna hand something in there. You're like, yeah, this is good.
it's funny that you mentioned that because it's true that like boards is kind of tough because you have this thing where it's like you really start from scratch, and there's like, you read the outline or the script,
Yeah.
and maybe you have a couple of pictures in your head, maybe you have a
Mhm.
scene that's playing out in your head, but most of the time there's some sequences where sometimes you're like, well, here we go, I have no fucking idea
Yeah.
what this is gonna look like.
And not all the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes you work from roughs too, but even then, you're still like you can't do what's in the roughs because there's a reason why they're roughs. You have to do something else or add to it in some way. So and
Yeah.
that's sometimes that's even harder because you're looking at someone else's work and you're like, I don't know, that's pretty damn good. How am I supposed to improve upon that?
A unique part of storyboarding as a job is it's this job where your first pass, like you're pouring these raw ideas out of yourself, and then you show it to people, and then they say redraw these like 50
Yeah.
panels. Like you're like
Yeah.
redrawing large swaths of whether it's a whole scene, whether it's two whole scenes, whatever. um uh like you're having to not only redraw those but sometimes start from scratch and come up with a new idea for that whole scene, or a new
Infuriating.
joke. They're like, this joke doesn't work. Yeah.
You have to have like you got to be able to be told no if you're going to do this.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to accept that you throw away half of what you do. And I'm really accepting of that at this point in my career, but there's never not going to be a moment where you have something that you're laughing at and you show someone else and they're like, I don't get it. And you're like, are you kidding me? That's your problem and not mine that you don't get it and you don't like it. That's your problem. Everybody else is going to love it. Just air it. Just air it as is.
That's so hard, dude. I don't know if you guys have been in this situation where like you do your board and you come up with the joke and you're like, I'm so smart. This is so fucking funny. No one's gonna see that coming. And then
I'm so
you
clever.
pitch. I'm so clever. You pitch, and then this thing that you thought was like heartfelt and nice, everybody's like laughing their ass off, and you're like, well, didn't expect that, but wait until you see this one, and click, dead silence, and you're like,
Oh
what?
no! Oh no!
You know what I mean?
You're hyping it up in your own mind, like they're gonna
Yeah.
love this.
Yeah, and then it's just like nobody cares, and you're like, next panel, quick. It's just...
Yeah, a weird part of this, like this process too, is like you lock yourself away for like a week or two
Yes.
doing these boards, and no
Yeah.
one, half the time no one sees it. You don't, a lot of the time you don't have someone to bounce ideas off of, whatever, and then finally you pitch it or whatever, or you finish your board, and yeah, you get this dopamine hit of people seeing it, but ultimately you don't see that final episode half of the time for a year. I think that part of the reason why I think streaming is interesting is because you get some dopamine hits while you're drawing, and it, like there's a little bit of a like taking away that tension from
Yeah.
like man, when is this going to feel good, because in real time someone might be like, oh my god, that pose you're drawing is so sick, or it's funny.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why it was appealing to me, because even when I know that I'm not going to be able to um reliably post all the time on like Instagram or Twitter or something, keep up with the algorithm, I know I'm working. I know I'm going to be working all the time. And if I can be on a project or do some freelance that allows me to stream it, like man, that's I don't know. I love it.
I
I
agree.
recently working with my friend who's a YouTuber and doing some boards for him because I'm gapping between projects at the moment, and I've been able to just completely from scratch board things that are just entirely my ideas and not have the same kind of studio pushback because he's my friend and there's still things that he says no to. I've pitched some jokes, I'm like, this is really funny, and he's like, I don't get it. I'm like, well, that's then I can get
that's your problem. That's
your problem that you don't get it because it's funny, and I get other people in his team to gang up on him because they're my friends. But with his stuff, an episode comes out like next month, so I'll work on something, and then I got like for the first time in my life, I got to see something I work on come out the next month and be able to post it, and it was something that I was freshly proud of. And every time something comes out like a year or two later, you're always going to hate it to some degree. I've gotten to the point where my boards look like my boards and I'm pretty happy with all of them, but there's always something that you're like, I wish I could have done that in retrospect, even though when you're looking at it, you're not looking at it from the week you were working on it, with deadlines, with what else was going on in your life. And I tell people all the time that when you are watching an episode of anything and thinking about who the hell did that and why did they make that decision and what's going on, it was a week out of someone's life, at least with boards. There's everybody has different kind of deadlines to make whatever they're making, but with boards, if you're saying, why the hell did you do that, it was a week of my life. There's some things that I have to give myself a little bit forgiveness with. I'm like, I could have been sick that week. There could have been other things going on. I could have just not wanted to fucking do it that week. I mean, every single day you have to wake up and make the damn storyboard. And some weeks you really just don't want to, or some days you don't want to, and you're just phoning it in. Like you're handing in something like, this is good enough. I survived. And when it airs, there's some disappointment sometimes. You're like, man, that sucks. And I've working in this industry, I have a lot more forgiveness for people who are like, I hated this episode of The Office. It was terrible. I'm like, yeah, but that was like a blip in time in someone else's life. That like, think about when like I worked in a mall and whatever shitty day I was having. I'm like, if that was aired a year later, yeah, that was a terrible day. Now everybody gets to see it and rerun it and watch it forever. But it also makes me happy knowing that some of my favorite episodes of something that I think this is a masterpiece could have been someone's worst week of their life. Like this could have been their worst work. This could have
Mhm.
been like their dog died, their cousin died. This could have been they got broken up with, they had to move, whatever was going on. I'm like this whoever
And
I
they
thought was
probably still made it pretty good.
Yeah, because it's still aired. No, I think that's a really good point because I remember, especially when you work in super cartoony, like tons of jokes a minute kind of cartoons.
yeah,
Dude, if something bad happens in your life, it's fucking hard because
hard.
like I don't know, somebody dies in your family, you get
Yeah.
broken up with your partner, your pet
Yeah.
dies or something like, and then you got to go to work and come up with all the jokes. Oh man, that's
Yeah, now write this funny scene. Your dog died.
right.
Go.
Yeah, like
You know,
oh my
like
god, that's so
I mean, that would
hard.
be great actually. But you can't like entirely phone it in because it's not one of those things like there's some weeks where what I'm doing is if I've already thumbnailed it out, everything's already approved and I'm just cleaning it and doing post to post. There's a degree of autopilot I can do in the process, but not every week's going to be like that. It depends on what my workload is. It depends on where we are with pitching or redoing something that sometimes you have to be smart and funny and a good artist and be wearing all of these hats in the worst week of your life, and on the good weeks you're gonna get the easy jobs where you're just cleaning up poses that you did last week or redoing a shot or something. It's never timed right where the worst week of your life you have the easy work. It's always going to be like come up with the funniest damn thing we have ever seen in television, like right
Yeah.
when you're going through a tragedy.
Yeah, I'm like at my grandpa's hospital bed. I'm like, listen, grandpa,
Yeah.
I know you see the light fading, but can you please it's thumbnail week right now.
Hey, what'd you think?
And
Hey, Grandpa, what'd you think about this joke? So, this guy goes
Right.
like, he said, "Joe who? Joe Mama." What'd you think?
and then it's just like, he just flatlines on
You're
your
like, that's great.
joke.
We got to keep that in the episode. He killed
No,
my
it's your
grandpa.
fault. That's your fault. He died before he heard the joke.
Right.
Oh
This
my
joke
god.
killed my grandpa.
Oh my god. Okay, we gotta put a content warning on this episode. Sorry, it gets real dark. Sorry, y'all.
No one's grandpa died.
No one's grandpa actually
There's
died.
no one out there whose grandpa's ever died. I don't know what you're worried about.
That's the joke that did not make it in the pitch room. Is like, what if the character's pitching a joke and their grandpa's dying?
And then
honestly,
it'll be your luck that the studio executive, like the grandpa just died, and they're like, I don't find this funny. Insensitive.
dude, you're making this joke, but this is a real thing that happens. Sometimes you're like, you're pitching an episode, it's great, but for some reason, I don't know, you have a bunch of cats, you have a swarm of cats, and the exec just got like scratched by a cat this week, and he's really upset because now he doesn't know if he has rabies or something, and now your episode is scanned. Sometimes that happens.
And then your next page is like, people with rabies are dorks. And you're like, oh no.
I've pitched stuff before. I actually pitched something like a week ago to my friend for his YouTube channel. And I was like, okay, here's the thumbnail, and I wanted to run it by you because it's probably not the most appropriate thing, but I think it's really funny. And so I showed him these thumbnails, and I don't even know if I should say what it is, but I showed it to him, and his reaction was like, not even a laugh, not anything funny. It's like, I don't think we should do that because that's probably extremely inappropriate. I'm like, yeah, but it's funny, right? It's the worst thing ever is when you get that serious reaction from someone. We can't joke about that. That's not funny. You're like, oh, but it is. It really is.
That's the thing.
Yeah, it's like that grow up. It's like that, like, oh, grow up. Like when you're like a kid, like like a stern parent is like, oh, when you gonna grow up?
Yeah. It's tough because I feel like, yeah, comedy is like so personal. It's like so much about like, yeah. I don't know. I mean, that's a whole debate that's going on the internet. We don't have to like dip into it, but like, like where are the boundaries in comedy? How far can you go? What's,
I don't think there's any. You just have to do it well. Like I really don't think that there's no limit as long as
the internet would disagree.
Probably
I
Fuck
think
the
probably,
internet.
right?
right. I don't really care about that. I think
Yeah.
no limit as like where people draw the line is honestly just where they're not comfortable, you know. But if you make something good and someone laughs at it, the line is blurred. So as long as it's funny and done well, if you execute it well, because people can give examples, it's like, well, you can't make this kind of joke, except this TV show did, and that was fine. But when someone else did, it wasn't. And it's like the reason why there's a pass from people is because it was good.
Yeah, it ages bad sometimes though. Like I was just talking to some of my buddies about Malcolm in the Middle. It's one of my favorite shows. It's so funny. And they were like, some of the stuff aged bad. And I was like, oh gosh, I don't even remember anything that I thought aged bad. You know what I mean? I was like, I just remember it being like so funny and quirky and crazy. And now I'm like, I'm so scared of like rewatching it. Like most of it, for my friends who watched it recently, they said like 80%, 85% of it good. But like there is like that little extra 15 that's like, oh,
and that was someone's a blip in time in someone else's week where that
right, yeah.
whoever did it doesn't even remember doing that, you know. It's like not to excuse anything in the world, because you know things change and we all grow and learn, but it again that's another...
are you saying like, yeah, like that week the grandpa died, so they put in that
the racist joke happened when grandpa died. It's okay. No, I'm not saying that, but it's like it's one of those things that like working in TV gives you a different perspective than being a fan of TV, where there's a lot more forgiveness for mistakes, for bad episodes of things. Like it's someone else's job. Like the same as like if someone messed up your McDonald's order, if you're like, this is a really bad episode of my favorite TV show, it's like, well, it's the same thing as like someone forgot the tomatoes on my hamburger. It's like that was someone's work 1 week of their life.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
It's weird how like things have changed over just like the course of like what we're allowed to put in cartoons in general. Like for instance, like you'll see something like Big Mouth, or like a show on Netflix. Well, they can have like penises in there, or they can have extra raunchy jokes, even like things that never would have gotten past S&P for TV.
I saw the pilot of Boondocks recently, and I was just like, you see the granddaddy's little like jiggly jiggle, and I was like, whoa. I was not expecting that.
I can't think of how proud that board artist must have been. That would have been the best week of my life.
I was like, oh wow, okay, here we go. So funny.
When shit gets past like S&P, or even gets like an okay or a solidarity, I want to try from like a director or someone else on the project, like a showrunner, whoever says, I really want to try to make it happen. We'll see. That's the best thing ever. And we did that a lot on SpongeBob. I feel like SpongeBob got more of a pass than a lot of children's cartoons, just because of seniority. But also like people in the 90s who are making these jokes fought for SpongeBob to be the way it is, and now we can kind of casually say, hey, we want to do this, and everyone else kind of has to accept, well, it's SpongeBob, they can do something gory. But I knew people on the Loud House that were kind of frustrated with that. It's like, we tried to do one like a little bit raunchy thing, and they said no, but on SpongeBob you could just turn a character inside out and show their guts, but we can't have someone like this is not a real thing, this is just an example, like we can't have someone have a paper cut, but you can show Patrick's innards, you know.
I think it's because, okay, here's what I'll say. I think it's because Loud House is very realistic. It's very grounded, even though the characters are cartoony and they can do the like zip, 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 or like they can like get smashed into a pancake, or like because I remember who did I tell? There was an episode I boarded on the Loud House, and English is my second language, so sometimes I read scripts and I don't know it's a an analogy or like a metaphor, and I read Lincoln gets turned into a pretzel, and you know, like it's like it means just he gets like beat up a bunch, and I just literally drew him into the shape of a pretzel, and people were like, that's so funny, and I was just like, I just did what was in the script. but that's the kind of cartoony, that's the top cartoony you can do.
If you didn't do that, someone else would get back to you and be like, why doesn't he look like a pretzel? You know.
I feel like it's kind of funny though, because it's like Loud House is so grounded that you can get away with it's just timing stuff. But SpongeBob, because it's so cartoony, it's just kind of like, oh, it's okay, nothing is real because they're cartoons. So there's sometimes you
That
can
makes
get
sense.
away
Yeah.
with that
It's
stuff. Yeah.
it's sort of like the Samurai Jack, like they made all the enemies robots so that you could cut
Yes.
them in half and stuff.
Well,
Yep.
Well,
I'm gonna say the
mhm.
most uneducated thing about standards and practices is that everything's just off of vibes, because what you can and can't do, I mean, this is, I guess, my same opinion about comedy. What you can and can't do is just up to whatever someone feels like the norm should be. So with something like Loud House or SpongeBob, I was like, you can't do that on Loud House because it's Loud House. It's like, well, why not? What if it's a good joke and it makes sense with the story, or it's a good visual? What if I want to show this? No, you can't do it because this is the way
Dude.
we perceive it to be, you know?
Dude, I feel like the S&P people are some sick fucks. Like I think S&P, I think that they're so I think they're so perverted, and like they because they
S&P
see
wants you to take
they
the
see
South.
things they see things everywhere. I recently worked on a project where uh where over and over again things were getting flagged, were like, that building looks like a penis, or like
Yep,
that explosion, you have to change it away from yellow because it looks like piss, or
I've gotten a lot.
like in a meeting, they were like, it looks like that person's doing something into that other person's mouth, and it was like just like a character pouring something, like a a bag. But like I wanted to ask you, have you had any interesting SMP notes that you had to change where you were like, what?
I
Like,
a lot. I've had a lot on SpongeBob and Kamp Koral, but I had, like, side note about SMP. One of my really good friends is Lisa Hannawalt. She made Tuca and Birdie, and she's complained to me her grievances about showing bare butts on television, and how
oh my
she got
God.
back from SMP about um one shot she did that I don't even know if this is like NDA or not, so I'm just gonna be vague about it. There were bare butts from adult characters, and not even like, I guess, like, not even that sexually inappropriate, but
You didn't see the wiener. It was just a butt.
no, just like, naked butts. And notes back from SNP were like, we can't see that many naked butts, or we can't see that. And I
A
thought that
butt
was
counter. There's a little
yeah, I
person
guess
with
so.
like a clicker. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, there's a 5 butt limit.
That's
Sorry.
funny because butts are usually fine. I feel
But
like
here's
butts are usually okay.
yeah, and that's where I'm going. Is I told her, you
It's
have no
arbitrary.
clue how many bare asses I will draw in a week for Patrick Star gags. Like, that's just acceptable. I've drawn him butt naked. I've drawn his bare ass in so many shots for a gag, for a laugh. He gets pantsed, he bends over, he shows plumber's crack. But the assumption is because he's at least on Kamp Koral, but also very strange because on SpongeBob he's an adult, but because it's a kid's show, and in the context of Kamp Koral he's a kid, that it's all right. But when Lisa was drawing bare butts of adult characters, then it's suddenly sexual and raunchy. So that's my opinion of, like, I think S&P is just going off of vibes alone and not a specific set in stone rule on anything. It's like, I just feel like this is, I don't like it. I just feel that this is wrong. This shouldn't be here, kind of thing, and not based off of, hey, here's a rule. Like, there are rules that we've gotten notes back on
Yeah.
things for, but I feel like a lot of the job, and this is again coming from a complete lack of understanding, naive place, because I've never worked in standards and practices. I don't know anyone specifically in standards and practices. I don't know why they do what they do. But from my experience, from my end of things in pre-production, I feel like it's just going off of a feeling of
It's a
what
vibe.
I think
it's a
you're
vibe.
I think
I
you're
don't like
kind of you're kind of right in a way. I do feel like I sometimes I don't want to knock on standard practices too hard, because I'm like, it's also their job, and they're just
Sure,
kind of
sure,
like
sure.
Yeah.
these poor people that are just like, we gotta watch cartoons and tell them what's wrong, and they're just like, it's just a job, like it just pays better than McDonald's. I don't know, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think someone just like woke up in 6th grade and
Let's try to ruin
thought
our
like
day.
oh, I want to work it, it's just like, so I just want to give
Same
them
thing
a
about
little.
us. They're like, this poor person that had to wake up and make a fart joke. What a loser. And then I hand it to them and they're just like, this is terrible. Thank God I don't have to be the one drawing the fart joke.
Yeah.
I another thing that I've heard is that a lot of it is negotiable. Like they'll like
Yes.
trade things like, okay,
Yes.
like we'll take out this if you let us keep in this, which also makes it all feel even more arbitrary because
Yeah.
they'll be like, okay, so you can have 7 butts in the show, but you have to take out you know uh, fart from the name on this sign or whatever it is.
Well, it's also because if they don't give any notes, it will look like they're not doing their jobs. You know what
Sure,
I
sure,
mean?
sure.
So it's that thing. Like I've heard of like, okay, this is where it gets a little crazy, but I've heard of people intentionally putting, how do they call it? It's basically
Like a
what's
fake scene or a fake gag
yeah,
or like
a fake
yeah.
gag, a fake thing that's like so
A decoy.
outrageous. Yes, thank you, exactly. Decoy S&P flag material. So then they can be like, take that out. They can't set themselves on fire. That's too much. And then you're like,
So
Mhm.
I have going back to your question, I have an amazing experience with standards and practices that changed my life forever. And it wasn't that long ago, it was maybe a year ago. But I also don't think this episode has aired, so I'm going to try to be as vague as possible about it while telling probably the funniest note I've ever gotten. It was an episode of Kamp Koral, and I guess this is all pretty non-spoilery, but there's 2 characters that are narwhals, Narlene and Nobby, and they are siblings. And in this one scene that I boarded, the sister wakes up the younger brother, and he's tiny. He's like probably she's like normal, like girl sized, and he's probably the size of like a pug. And she or he wakes her up. So I'm just completely. It doesn't matter. I guess it like doesn't violate
Someone
NDA if
wakes somebody up.
happens. But someone wakes up and like flips over in a hammock or something, and there's some commotion, and then one character, the little guy, his narwhal nose is like stuck like a
Oh my
porcupine
god.
pin in his sister's butt cheek. And
oh yeah.
that went fine. It everybody thought that was funny and okay until it got notes back from S&P that it contained something that we all laughed about in a meeting. And I'm wrapped on this show, so I guess it really doesn't matter if I think this is the funniest thing I've ever heard, and I don't think it'll step on any toes or hurt feelings. But S&P gave a note back that it was NCBP. Like, what the hell is that? Non-consensual butt poking. And because one of the
Of sister.
That's
then
interesting, but yeah,
it
it's
doesn't
interesting.
relation. But you
Hmm.
can poke any character's butt. Like I can have SpongeBob poke Patrick's butt. There could be anything stuck in a character's butt. It can be another character stuck on another character's butt. But one of them was asleep and like woke up and like there was commotion and there was another character stuck on the other character in a funny way. I think the way I drew it was like clear posed where it doesn't look like there was any character in another character's anus. It just looked like there was a character stuck to another one in a funny place. And from a child mind, you're not thinking that. You're not thinking like this is incestuous anal sex or anything horrendous. You're thinking
Yeah.
he's stuck on her butt cheek. There's nothing wrong or inappropriate. We weren't thinking anything wrong. I think this is also a naive opinion from fans of animation. They're like, they snuck in this dirty joke. Sure,
I
we
do
make
feel like
jokes like that,
it's
but
it is interesting. It's very interesting. I think for me, I think it's interesting that this could get flagged because it shows a shift in culture, which I think can be good. I think it can be interesting and good. I understand though that it's kind of like it's a weird thing to to get non-consensual.
it's the best note I've
Yeah,
ever received because not the fact
right.
that it was I got a note back that said that's non-consensual butt poking, but I got a note back that this is an established rule that we have that we can't do
Huh.
non-consensual butt poking. That this was not this scene specific. This was this has happened before. This is a rule of ours at Standards and Practices, and we can't do that. I thought that was the funniest fucking thing ever.
Like that rule is on the wall now, and it's sort of like that rule at the pool where you're like, don't get
Yes.
diarrhea in the pool. You
No.
know that someone did,
You can't have
and then
diarrhea
that's why they made that.
But to be
for
fair
14
though,
days.
I don't want to go on a big tangent or rant or controversy, but I used to love Pepe Le Pew as a kid. I thought he was so friggin' funny. And it's true now. When I watch the episodes, I'm like, man, this is some low-key emotional abuse on that kid.
Yeah.
You know, it's like all
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
Looney Tunes jokes that you're like, I think I don't know. There's a lot of Looney Tunes. I grew up with these cartoons, so I still think
Yeah.
they're funny.
It
But
wouldn't
Just strange things that were normalized that
yes,
now
Yeah.
like we think more about. Yeah.
yes, exactly. I don't know. I think it's good that we think about it. You know what I mean?
But I also think it's good to challenge and push the limits a little bit, especially if
Yeah.
in kids cartoons there is a certain amount of careful that you have to be. But I don't see anything wrong with challenging and pushing the limits because at least from a children's entertainment perspective is I don't think that kids need anything dumbed down. I think
Yeah.
that they have a full understanding of comedy the same way adults do. Does not mean put all your sex jokes in a children's show, sure, but the reason why stuff that I grew up with inspired me to be where I am today, like SpongeBob and Ren and Stimpy, the reason why that those were so impactful to me is because the people creating it were treating me as equal. They were treating me like when I'm thinking of something funny, I'm not thinking, is this something that a child is going to enjoy? I'm thinking, is this something that I'm going to laugh at, or the next person I show this to is at the studio, like my coworker is going to laugh at this? Who's going to think this is a good idea and we want to make this? Because at the end of the day, we are making it for ourselves. I think if you weren't making it for yourself, you would just go crazy. I personally could never work in something like preschool where I have to have like curriculum or worry about a child's development in any form. But from
School is
what I
really
do,
hard. Yeah.
yeah, no, I
Mhm.
couldn't. I really couldn't. I think if I was like down on my luck with jobs, sure, I could storyboard something, but it's definitely not where I would want to be. It's when I'm making stuff, I'm making it ultimately for me.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that's really cool. I think, man, what a conversation. We're getting deep into things, y'all. I I want to keep talking about the shit all the time, but I don't want to let our patrons hanging because we do have some really good questions from our patrons from
Okay.
Instagram, from YouTube, and from Twitter. People love you, Pinkie, and they want to know more things. So from kittyfries, our patron, one of our patrons. I really like this question. If you had to give your younger self some drawing advice, what would it be?
Okay, I have to think on this for a second.
You can take your time. You can take your time.
It depends on how young you would say I am, because as a child, absolutely no notes, just keep drawing, just keep doing what you're doing. I made all kinds of bullshit, and I would make comics that I'd half finish and then toss out. I'd make drawings I'd half finish and toss out, and I think that's all a part of the process. I really don't think this is probably like the most like egotistical thing ever, but I really don't think that I needed advice. I think I needed to fail and get to where I am. I don't really have a ton of regrets except maybe don't post some things on the internet when I was super young, but everything else, I really have, like, it's where I am today. It was part of my journey. I think I should have made bad drawings and I should have fucked up. I just maybe shouldn't have done some of it so publicly, but I should have made embarrassing, cringy things, and I should have learned lessons at every corner. So I really don't understand a lot of the, like, if you could go back in time kind of thing, because if I was an amazing artist when I was young, I really don't think I would want to do what I'm doing right now. I think I would have already, if I was perfect when I was 11, why would I be doing this? You know?
I feel like, okay, here's a question we can ask that's kind of like on that same like vibe, I guess. let's say if current you met little 20-year-old you and you're like, here's how you can save some time. Check out this advice. What would
Yeah.
that advice be?
It would be what I talked about earlier, not making my boards perfect, not worrying so much
Okay.
about what the internet thinks. And I would say focus more on getting your idea out there, what you think is funny, what's a good idea, what you want to see in the episode, and not worry so much about, is someone going to look at this and say, is SpongeBob not perfectly on model? Because that is a portion of it. But what makes a board good is being a good board, not being a good illustration. I have a ton of career advice I'd give myself, but young self trying to learn how to draw, whatever the hell you want to do, just keep doing that. That somehow got me where I am. I think it was just because I was enjoying it. I feel like if it was a job very young or taken seriously, well, my mom was an art teacher actually, and she tried to give me advice, and I refused it my whole childhood, and I was super angsty about it because I didn't want my mom to tell me what to do. I also didn't want to be an artist because I didn't want her career. I didn't want to listen to her. I think that kind of got me on my own path too, because she didn't make cartoons, she didn't draw in this style. I figured myself out. I think at that age you just kind of have to.
I like that. That's really cool. That's cool. Like your I like your rebelliousness of like, no, mom, I'm on my own
Art is
path.
stupid. It's for
Yeah.
moms.
Artist for moms.
From our patron, Joe Binson. As a director and storyboard artist, what are you not seeing enough in people's portfolios? Do you ever look at people's portfolios and give advice?
I do. Yeah, I don't see the actual work in people's portfolios. It's one of the, like, I feel the meanest saying, but everybody puts in good drawings and stuff that they like and fan art. And I'm not seeing things that really demonstrate that you can actually do the job that you're saying you can do. I see, and this is from a standpoint of people who are very, very fresh in the industry or trying to break in. People who say I'm a character designer and they have a ton of illustrations, but I'm not seeing like character design for TV. Like, and my advice to people is to look at someone who's experienced character designer and make something like that in your portfolio. Like, I see full color drawings of characters that people made up on their own, but I'm not seeing like line work, turnarounds, or even just rough sketches of concepts.
Expression sheets.
Yeah,
Stuff
stuff that like,
yeah.
Mouth poses, the A and the B and the L and the
honestly, with character stuff, and I'm not like full-time character designer at all, I just do it on the side. I haven't even had to do that stuff personally.
Really?
I've done a lot of like sketching, and the clean lines is a shit ton of what I've had to do, where you take something from a storyboard and then draw the pose clean. And but with storyboard stuff, and this is me not following my own advice when I was trying to break in, is like you have to have actual boards in there, and it doesn't have to be like 11 minutes long, but it has to be like formatted like a storyboard. And I want to see boards and not just a finished animatic of anything. I don't want to see an animation. I want to see something that's a concept from script, and everyone feels like it has to be timed into music, into sound, into voice acting. And maybe, but a lot of your job will just be dead silent. Someone has to look at this, even just thumbnails and boards, like in portfolios, sorry, like just showing that you know how to do the job is what's missing. And I think that there's a balance where you can show your really clean, really nice work, but it's, at the end of the day, it's a job. It's not just being good. And I think if I was hired off of being a good artist, I wouldn't be here. I think the reason why I was discovered and I made it in the industry is because someone saw potential in me, and someone saw that I had potential to do the job. And not because this is the best artist I've ever seen online. They have their pick of them. It's because this is someone who can work fast, work well, and do what I'm asking for the production.
Yeah, very true.
That's good advice.
Yeah. From our Instagram follower, Cash Dart, how did you develop your drawing skills to get into animation, and what exercises and techniques do you recommend? I like that question a lot.
would watch a lot of sequences that I really liked, and I would draw exactly what I saw. It's not unique or fun. It's not me making my own things, but it really made me think about why people made the choices that they made, like why this character poses a certain way. One of my biggest inspirations has always been Ren and Stimpy, and I would rewatch scenes that I thought this is a masterpiece, which is circling back to this is just a week or two or whatever out of someone's life. But in my eyes, this is something that I can watch over and over and over again and think this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And I really want to draw like that. And I'm sure everyone has a sequence like that. Everyone has a moment in television or something that impacted them that they're like, this was such a good moment, whether it's good drawings or posing or just the way a character reacted to something, whatever, why it impacts you doesn't matter. It's dissecting it and thinking this person was given a script or given the audio and had nothing else and had to make a decision. What am I going to do in this scene? Like, how is it going to be timed? How's this character reacting? How they're going to hit these notes in this audio, or how they're going to hit these notes on the script. And once you dissect that, I feel like you really start to understand what the job really is, and not just, this is a really cool drawing, this looks awesome on screen, but someone had to think about like every mouth movement, every pose, why the arms are doing something. It was all thought out and planned by someone else. And once you get to figuring out why, then you actually know how to board. That's from a storyboard standpoint. As far as like drawing characters on model, the only thing you can do is just keep drawing them and like copying what they look like, and then trying to draw that in different poses and looking at like, oh, this distance from the eyes, and this is how many heads tall the character is. And when I drew it this way, going back and critiquing it and going, oh, I drew it like 1.5 head too long, I got to shrink him down, and now he's on model.
Yeah, that's very true. I feel like I like that you talk about like how a character is like X amount of heads tall or whatever, because I feel like that's what most of drawing character on model actually means. It's just like, is it the right proportions? That's about it.
Yeah, drawing it loose and then going back and looking at what the character actually looks like and tightening it back up. Like, the only way that you can really learn how to do anything is initially by copying where you want to be. And I don't say copying it as in selling that as your own work, but just putting in the work to try to figure out why someone else drew it that way, why made certain choices with lines or posing, why those choices were made, so you know how to do those choices in your own work.
I love it. I think we have a lot of questions about art advice, so I'm just going to bundle them in a big one, because I think you've already like answered a bunch. But from Twitter, we have from @B_Nalgar and from @LionsNotice_. What drawing exercises references would you recommend so I can try and improve my drawing poses with the dynamic and kinetic elasticity seen in your work? I like that they really highlight the cartoony, dynamic, and
fancy words too,
and elastic. Yeah, that wordsmith alert.
Right.
If you had, and then the other one is like, if you had one sentence of important art advice to give, what would it be? You've kind of covered a bunch, but let's just have you say one sentence about how do you make your characters feel real stretchy and dynamic.
I'm going to plug my own stuff real quick. I actually do a workshop on this. I do a pushing poses workshop. I've done it at conventions. I've done it like at Burbank YMCA. I offer it to schools. I will take a drawing and say, okay, draw whatever you want for 30 minutes. I go around and critique everything and then show people how they could push whatever pose that character is doing to be more expressive. But aside from that, line of action is my sentence. Just line of action is important. If you draw like a curved C-shaped line and that's where the character is going, draw the character over that line. Everything I do starts with a line of action. Absolutely everything I do in my boards, before there's any kind of character construction going on, it all just starts with one line. That's my simple answer. And then my reference or materials that I have to give people is my biggest inspiration ever has been Bob Kamp, co-creator of Ren and Stimpy. And if you just Google image search like Bob Kamp drawing tutorial, whatever, he has made so much content teaching people how to push poses, teaching people how to make fun, lively character designs. I very early on in my career, I read through a lot of his stuff. I followed a lot of that and took a lot of that to heart. There's a ton of books and stuff about how to make things lively and line of action. I was never a big reader. I was never a big book purchaser. Everything that I have found has been on the internet. And my other note is, I don't see anything wrong with this personally. For me, I don't know how every other artist feels about it. I never mind people just sending me a message and sending me a picture of something and they're like, I don't know how to make this more lively and dynamic. And every once in a while I will redline. I know that's something that some people like their time paid for. I don't see anything wrong with asking for advice or help from people you look up to, worded correctly and nicely, not expecting anything back from them, or even willingness to pay for someone's time, just nicely saying, hey, I really look up to you. How do I do what you do? You know, I feel like everybody is kind of prone to flattery in a way. If you're like, I really want to draw like you, I don't know how, I'm stuck. I think a lot of people will have mercy on that, but I can't speak for everyone. I know some people would be like, you got to pay for my time, and that's completely fair.
No, but I agree. I think it's really great the way you phrase it. It's like, you know, what's the worst that can happen? They leave you on read or they say no.
Yeah.
And it's not a bad, you know, as long as you're being courteous and nice and you reach out and you're
don't expect anything.
Yeah, don't expect anything. And you know, maybe you get lucky and they'll be like, yeah, here's some advice. Did you draw these SNPs with the yellow tie, Pinkie?
I can't draw anything in here because I start and then it lags to hell. I can't handle it.
I feel like it could have looked like a drawing of yours. Was that you,
right,
Sean?
I'm trying to channel Pinkie.
I got fooled. Sean fooled me. I thought that was Pinkie. What? That's crazy.
I'm a chameleon.
Yeah.
My Jamboard, I'm watching everyone else draw, but I can't do it because I start and then it lags way too much and I can't draw like a line a minute.
That's funny though.
That's the funny part about working on animated shows though, is one of the skills is studying and trying to replicate how somebody draws. And it's one of the few art forms where that's like rewarded. Like, you know, when you're growing up and like people are like, oh, you're copying that, you know, that's bad. But like learning how to do that and learning how to draw the Simpsons or whatever, those are such useful skills. And so like trying to figure out, you know, and say like, okay, this is how I think you would draw that. Like, I think that's always kind of a fun thing to try to replicate someone's style a little bit.
In a way, I used to think that was stifling. Like, oh God, I have to draw everything on model. I have to draw it the way you draw SpongeBob. I wanted to be proud of someone looking at something and says, wow, that looks like SpongeBob. That looks like a TV show I know. But at the same time, like there's a fear of losing your self-expression. But I know so many people off of just how they draw a certain character or how they express or act, that I think if I were to draw Homer Simpson, you would be able to tell that it was one of my boards, and not in a bad way, not in a way of like, oh, it's off model and weird and wonky, but it's like, that's how Pinkie draws Homer Simpson, or that just mannerisms that I would make him do would be kind of, you would notice was me. And it's hard because that's something that you can't develop. You can't be like, I always draw characters winking at the end of every scene. You know, you can't have like signature. It just happens. It's weird. It's like, I don't purposefully do anything, but you can look at my work and say, that's my work, you know?
I had a pose like that. I had a specific pose of like, you know, like a character clenching their fist and like having the other arm behind them and just like a little bit of a leg flexed. And one of my buddies eventually was like, that's such a you pose. And I was like, I can never use this pose ever again.
my buddy
found out.
My buddy always does sunglasses jokes in his boards. Like if it, like he'll always put like a little sunglass joke, or like putting up sunglasses like flying onto somebody, or like he loves sunglass jokes.
I love sunglasses jokes. Listen, I'm the crowd for your buddy. I am so good. I remember like one time I was just like, I was boarding on a Loud House episode and I was just like, oh, like Lincoln sang a line. It's pretty good, but I just want to make sure it like is funny. And guess what? I added some sunglasses and it got some laughs. It got some laughs on the crowd. I was so
S-
proud of
some-
myself.
Always make me
Mhm.
laugh though.
You
There's
know,
some
the
things
like
that I'll do that I'm like, no matter what, this is always funny to me when a character does this. So you do kind of get some of your expression, but it
Sure.
just can't be intentional. Like it's one of those things that's like it's something about yourself, like your friend who thinks sunglasses jokes are really fucking funny,
yeah.
and it always makes them laugh when you put it in the storyboards. But like
Yep.
it's I struggled with as a young artist. I'm like, how are people gonna know when they see the episode that I did this? And the sad part is they won't.
Yeah.
But there's always going to be something that
Yeah.
does actually make you stand out in a good way, not in a way that this sticks out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, I do a lot of like people yelling and you being able to see the gums of the teeth. I do a lot of a joke that I put in a lot of stuff whenever I can is I really like when a character's dressed up at something, but it looks like they're like a little kid that tried to make a costume or like put on makeup. So like if you're like trying to dress up like an animal, like putting like bad smeared lipstick and or whatever it is, like a shitty costume, like a well-drawn character with a shitty costume on is very funny to me.
That's
And I don't know why.
That's
I don't
so
know why it
good.
is.
I feel like for me, my all-time favorite joke, if I can put it in, I'm so happy, is a character crying excessively, and everyone's just kind of like, oh, this is awkward. But that, you know, that me,
Yeah.
dude, I could do that all day. Just like the big tears, the snot,
Big goopy
everything.
globby tears.
Yeah. And everyone's just going like, okay. Favorite joke. I never get tired of it.
What about you, Pinky? Do you have a like a type of joke that you go back to that you like?
I
Like
think
who
my
would
signature is always breaking a model of a character, but not just to break it, like for a certain line, just to hit a certain note or a certain expression. I love to just completely contort or break something. That's always funny to me, especially when, and there's contrast, there's rules to that. When you have a character that goes, they have to be perfectly on model and then break. Like you just can't just break
I
them
got
willy
you.
nilly. Then it stops looking like the show. But it's really funny when you have something just go entirely off kilter or just reset immediately after that. Like having like
Yes.
a cutesy little character and then just this like nasty pose and then going back to normal. I feel like that's my
That's dope.
that
I
that
like
involves, but they're always fun.
I like doing like the break of just the face, but the rest of the character is
Yeah, I
drawn
love that.
or like a really like serious face or a realistic face or whatever it is.
Yeah, I break faces a lot. That's also a joke that I'll always toss in. Some man face is one of my favorite things to draw. You see it in a lot of my things where you have like a cute character and it like has like a realistic face of like
That's funny.
wrinkles and like a man's nose or something.
Man face.
I
Man
feel
face.
like this is never not funny. I feel like, yeah, anything that's just like, I don't know, with like very serious. I did that one joke once in Thundercats, and it was my favorite joke too. I was just like, there, because it was like a lot of exposition, and I was just like, oh, this exposition's so boring. And I was like, what can I do? And it was kind of like serious. So all of a sudden, all of them are like extremely serious, and they have like the cheekbones and like the nose with all the wrinkles, and they're
I
like,
love that.
yeah,
hell yeah.
it's so funny. We have a couple of questions from YouTube. So I do want to highlight, hey everyone, if you follow us on YouTube, we do the little promo asks there as well. Thanks to our new producer Marco. They're doing so amazing. We're so excited to have Marco on board. And so from our YouTube follower GG, did you feel pressure to create for an audience of kids and consider the impact on kids, or do you focus on your own vision? You kind of touched on that before, but let's just
fuck them kids. It's never about the kids. It is extremely rewarding. It's a different kind of rewarding. Having like friends who have kids watching your stuff or having children tell you how much they love the show. They don't conceptualize what I did or even what my job is most of the time. They just love the show, and you working on it is the coolest thing ever. So being a part of something children love is rewarding in a different way. But when I'm making something, it's not necessarily for kids. I'm not thinking about that. I'm not someone who wants children myself. I have some friends who have kids, but it's not a ton of my close friend group either. My friends who are moms aren't really in my immediate circle because we have different lifestyles. So it's just not really on my radar. However, I think of like going back to when I was watching Ren and Stimpy as a kid. I was watching it because my adult parents loved it and wanted to watch it with me and exposed me to it. And they were laughing and I was laughing, and we enjoyed this stuff together just as much as we enjoyed watching, like me and my dad would watch Monty Python. We liked watching stuff that it was just funny. It was just good. It wasn't kids stuff. It wasn't family stuff. It didn't matter who the audience was intended for. It was just good TV. And that's what I care about. That's what I want to work on. I don't really think of myself as a children's entertainer. I just want to make good TV. Now, if that's marketed to kids, that's someone else's problem. You want to sell it to whoever the hell you want. I mean, demographics are demographics. You could say, we make this show for women. Who gives a shit if men like it? But it's whatever you want to sell it to. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. It just has to be good. I just
So
want
it's
it
sort
to
of
be
like
good.
so it's sort of like worrying about that is more for S&P, not for you. Is
Or
that sort of the
whoever
yeah.
selling it. Like I'm in the process of pitching right now, and it's just like I just want to make something good. And if you're saying we want to sell more stuff to little girls, we want to hear more, like see more POC characters, we want to hear more from LGBT community or whatever, sure, we can gear towards whatever these demographics are and try to sell that. But it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what the demographic is. It just has to be good. It does, like I think that's the one unifying thing of everything we do is, and this is why people like to this day enjoy SpongeBob at like whatever horrendous age they are, not our intended audience of 6 to 11. You know, it's just because it's good.
So you're talking about like the best, funniest ever scene where a kid's running with scissors the wrong way. like, like, listen, as long as it's funny, it doesn't matter if we're teaching these kids to run with scissors face up.
It's not, I mean, everything, like, I don't think that, I mean, and I'm not in preschool stuff, even the stuff that I was watching as a kid, like going back to like SpongeBob and Ren and Stimpy and the stuff that was impactful to me, I was thinking, wow, this is a teachable lesson. I was
No,
thinking,
for sure.
this is funny. Like, that's fucking funny. I wasn't thinking I need like the Ren and Stimpy episode where they're like, don't whiz on the electric fence. I'm not like, well, I'm gonna try it, maybe I might. I mean, that's probably more of a character flaw than it is someone else's problem. That's probably just that I'm a stupid fucking kid.
Yeah.
It's also probably more important to have these like warning in front of something like Jackass rather than SpongeBob, because you know, you're probably more likely to be like, I'm going to jump off the roof of the building into a pool because I saw it on Jackass rather than
But like
SpongeBob.
what I do is funny or good entertainment first, and then we go back and then we can analyze and ask questions after. Then we can go,
Sure.
should we be doing this? Why are we doing this? What's the point of it? You know, is this good for family or children to see, or is this selling what we want to sell? But when I'm making it, you can't get caught up in that stuff, because I just don't think I'd be making anything good if I was worried about, is this impacting the minds of children? I mean, there's some things that I should entirely avoid doing, or I'll have to completely reboard it. Like if I wanted to draw a bloody, murderous, gory scene in a children's cartoon and go, well, I fucking liked it, I don't care about you, I'm definitely gonna have to redo it. Like there is some logic involved in it.
Yeah. So it's like, listen, kid, warning, children, do not try to blow up the Krabby Patty the way that Plankton did. Like, do not plant TNT and you know.
But I think treating kids as equals is also really good for their growth as well. And this is coming from someone who knows nothing about child development, and my opinion probably doesn't matter. But I've heard a lot from other people that and I've even seen this on Twitter, so it's probably even more reason to throw it out the window, that people say that they learned a lot of their vocabulary from like watching SpongeBob, because on the show nobody really worried about, well, our kids gonna know this big word. It's like, this is a funny thing to write in the script, and this is funny for the character to say, like saying like whatever Patrick says, and now I'm gonna disappoint so many SpongeBob fans, like, my mind is an enigma or whatever. It's hilarious to have the dumbest character on the show say something like that big, but that's children are absorbing those words, you know? It's like it's treating them like adults. Like I said, I grew up on stuff like Monty Python with my dad, which is not
Mhm.
something that would necessarily sell to children, but it grew. I don't think it grew my intelligence, probably made it worse, but it grew my humor and it grew me as a person. So
Yeah, I always liked that in Calvin and Hobbes when they sort of talked like adults. I thought that
Mm-hmm.
was cool.
Yeah.
Like I didn't felt talked down to when I read
Yeah.
that.
yeah, it's not talking down to kids. I'm ultimately making stuff for myself, but I do think that there is some importance in, like, even when I talk to my friends' kids, I don't do the like little like, wow, what did you do today? That is so cool. I talk to them like I'm talking to you guys, you know? I'm like, oh,
Mm-mm.
oh,
Fuck.
you're
Hey,
well,
yeah, shit, farts. You know, whatever. Like,
yeah.
it sucked. Fuck kids, dude. You suck, dude.
That's so funny. I feel like, dude, talking to kids is so hard though sometimes. I feel like I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Kids are kids are interesting. Um, we have another question from YouTube. YouTube, let's go. From at Eric Bernardo _ What kind of projects do you want to do in the future?
I really want to sell my show. I'm pitching, and right now is a terrible fucking time to do that.
Yes.
I
Can
I'm pretty
confirm.
happy with everything else that I'm doing. I immediately was fucking hired on SpongeBob at 22. It's really, really hard to top that. That's such a big show, and it's also a really hard show to start off on.
Yeah.
People in the industry have said beware the Bob. That's something that is spoken of because it's rough. Like you're doing a lot of work for the same amount of pay everybody else is doing, because it's just so animated and there's so many gags per second per minute that you wouldn't have on a show like The Loud House, where you're going to have something a little bit slower paced and more room for characters to react. In the time that Lincoln Loud would react to another character doing something, I'd have like 3 or 4 gags in a SpongeBob scene.
Mhm.
But I'm also working on something new that I'm really excited about that I can't talk about, and I'm happy with that as well. And the only other thing besides selling my show that has been a bucket list thing is I really want to storyboard on South Park. That's always been that, besides
Yeah.
SpongeBob, that's a bucket list. And I love how, I mean, I'm a big fan of the show, but I also love how the production is ran, because it's run like SNL, where you
Yep.
have the week to make it and then it's aired, which we talked
Mhm.
about earlier, that could be extremely rewarding. I like the grind of it. It's not something that I think I would do forever and ever and ever, because I think that probably kills people in some form. But that seems, it's so fucking fun, and it would be such, I'd just be so proud to be able to work on it. And it's what, going on for like, we're on like season 25
Yeah,
now, and there's going to be a couple more
25.
seasons that they're greenlit for. So I think it's still a realistic goal to get there eventually.
I think so. Yeah. Definitely, like anybody listening to this episode right now, make sure to check out Megan Praz's episode. She worked as an animator on South Park. So there's like some really,
That's
and
rough.
obviously there's the documentary 6 Days to Air
Yeah,
that you can definitely watch. But it's kind of cool to also hear Megan's little she adds a couple of like notes and flavor on it, which I think is really interesting.
that must be really rough to animate for it, because the changes that they do last minute, I can't imagine.
For animation,
Boarding
yeah.
fun.
Right, Vision is
So
really crazy. There's what did she say in her episode? This is we do a little recap real fast for y'all, just like tuning in for Pinkie, but listening to the Megan Praz TLDR. But there's a thing where they're like they have to stay on really late because they don't know when the shots are gonna come
yeah,
in. So they're really like around there's definitely it almost I don't know if anybody's watched like The Social Network, but there was a moment in that movie when everybody's kind of like, like getting like all riled up and like coding at like crazy hours of the night and like, taking shots and doing crazy shit. I feel like that's how I imagine South Park.
that
I don't know if
seems
that's real,
so
but
fun.
that's how I imagine it.
It's the thrill of it seems fun. It's definitely not, and I mean, thank God you kind of only do that for while it's airing, so
Yeah.
you get a breather. I couldn't do that for like every single day of the year forever for the rest of my life because I have horses. You can't, like, I can't just, like, the balance between me having horses and working in TV, I couldn't do like all hours of the day studio kind of thing. It's just impossible. It's a very high maintenance, difficult animal that does not want to keep itself alive.
We haven't talked about
my
horses at all.
Yeah, that's
This is a sudden surprise.
It's
Oh, really?
our Patreon Bialinsbea. Talk about Jeepers, please. Such a cutie.
So, my horse Jeepers also works in TV. While living in LA, which I'm currently actually in Colorado because me and my partner were long distance and I don't need to be in LA at the moment. So, saving money and some of my back and forth just by being here. When I need to be there, I will be there. But while I lived in Los Angeles, I did wrangling work with horses on set, and he did some animal acting gigs, which I still plan to keep up here. There's actually productions in New Mexico, and I'm in Southern Colorado, pretty damn close to there, and a pretty decent tax write-off for a very, very expensive animal. But we lived on Riverside Drive in Burbank, and my apartment was right next to his boarding barn. And it's the best place in the world. I can't speak enough about LA, especially being here. But I rode in Griffith Park every fucking day, and I'd ride to the Hollywood sign every week, which is about a 15-20 mile ride from Burbank. It's pretty intense. I'm a long distance rider. That's some decent miles. But not like directly to the Hollywood sign. To go to the Hollywood sign and back, it's about like 15-ish miles. I'd also ride to the Griffith Observatory. But people don't know this about LA, is that Griffith Park is 44,000 acres, and on my street alone there were 900 horses. There's a lot of horses in Los Angeles, and the community's pretty big. And if you are around like where Disney Animation is, that's Riverside Drive. That's where I used to live, and that's the Rancho Equestrian neighborhood of Burbank and Glendale. Glendale's like bordering on the same street. And there's a lot of history. There's a lot of Hispanic history and culture there. There's history that goes back to like early Disney development, but there's been stables there forever, like since very, very early Burbank. And the reason that horses can be I guess so encouraged and catered to for our public facilities, because we have tunnels that go underneath like the 134 freeway, and we have bridges that go over the LA River that you can access Griffith Park from these urban areas where these animation studios are, is because Griffin J. Griffith, Griffith Park's namesake, attempted to murder his wife, and after the whole public trial where he pleaded public insanity, that he had given his acreage, Griffith Park, to Los Angeles, I think, to kind of change public opinion, or he willed it to Los Angeles, the city. And one of the rules he had in there is he wanted, this was like right at the time where automobiles were becoming big, is that he still wanted horses to be a part of it. So there were encouragement for public facilities for horses. Gene Autry, the famous singing cowboy, also funded a lot of things. He funded one of the signs in the letters in the Hollywood sign, but he also funded like the horse bridge that goes over the LA River from Burbank. I actually am unfortunately a TikTok influencer. That happened on accident, from filming videos of me riding and talking about things. My TikTok's Ye Hollywood, and my like online presence in the horse world is the Unhinged Trail Guide, where I ride on trails and I'd film myself vlogging and I talk about it. And a lot of my content started in Los Angeles, and now it's just kind of wherever the hell I go. And I talk extensively about this because it was so weird, because I've always been a horse person. I grew up on a ranch, and I've been riding independently since I was 3 years old. That lifestyle it was prevalent in LA, but it wasn't known. It was so weird, because I found the community and there's so many horse people there, and so many people have horses and ride. But I would go out with friends to like downtown LA, and I said, yeah, I have a horse. And people thought that was the weirdest fucking thing to ever hear. Like, I have a horse in a cowboy way, not in a snooty, like, I have fancy, like, warm bloods and
That's-
they're
That's kind of what I was
100,000.
gonna say. It's like there's kind of two types of like horse people, I guess, because
Yeah.
my
But
mom's
like, I
more
have
the
a
like,
horse,
you
like,
know.
I went to cow sorting every week and, like, you know, did rodeo stuff in Los Angeles. And when you tell that to people, they're surprised, like, here? Like, you don't have to leave LA? I'm like, no, in Burbank.
Yeah. There's if you go, yeah, there's definitely there's like a big if you go around base camp, this is for the LA
Yep.
people. If you go around base camp, you'll see sometimes the horse poop on the street, and you'll be like,
Yeah,
ah,
I would ride to base camp, and I would also walk my horse there, and he would sit at the table with me and my friends. And I have met animation peers there, and brought my horse, and they've brought their dogs, and we've sat and had lunch together. And I have pictures, and I could definitely send you or post those pictures when this comes out of me sitting with people having like not really like work meetings, but your typical like we're connecting kind of as animation professionals and just catching up kind of lunch or brunches with my horse present.
that's so cute. What a good buddy. Um, have you? Well, I guess he's with you right now, right, in Colorado?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
nice. Do you have a? Are you the one transporting him when you have to like go around, or do you?
Yeah, I have a pickup truck and a horse trailer, and I did
Nice.
also keep those in Los Angeles, which is a pain in the ass because you have
I
to park the horse
bet.
trailer in trailer parking lot. So it's not like I lived in an apartment, had my horse in a boarding facility. Luckily, my apartment did have parking that fit my pickup truck, but not everywhere does. And then my
Mm,
horse trailer was somewhere else. So in order to go anywhere, I'd have to hook up my trailer and then
yeah.
drive back to get my horse, go somewhere, then drop off my horse, then drop off my trailer. And then by the time it's like the whole day is gone, and it's nice. Like as much as I miss LA, it is nice having an easier way where my truck and trailer are just outside.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you, I feel like in order to survive with that lifestyle in LA, you have to love being in LA because it makes everything with horses a little bit harder and more expensive too.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I believe it. Let's talk about creative block, not the podcast, but that very stressful art rut moment in life, I
Yeah.
guess. Do you experience it? And if you do, what does it feel like for you?
I think everybody does. I
You'd
think
be
most of
surprised. Some got people that were just like, nope, not me. I was like, "Whoa."
really interesting. I definitely have a lot of weeks where I just don't even want to fucking draw at all. But I feel like a lot of my creative block more comes emotionally, or I'd rather be doing something else. And it's hard because I feel like I have a more active lifestyle or inclination to be more active and go do things, like I said before, that I feel like I'm very social and extroverted, but I also have like the whole outdoors hobbies and everything and things that I'd rather be doing. And it's hard to sit down in front of a Cintiq and make myself draw sometimes. I think that's the worst part, is just while the whole world is turning, everything else is happening around you. I have, I guess, like FOMO problems, that
Mm,
everything
mhm.
is happening in the world, but I have to sit there and draw, and it's like long and excruciating, and you're not going to see the end of it for a while. And my other creative block is just starting. I love thumbnailing. It's actually one of my favorite part of the process. Is starting the board sucks. Like, you get
Mhm.
excited about it. Pitching and making jokes is my favorite thing, is when I'm like, oh my god, this is so funny, look at this, here's my idea, and you're just back and forth and showing things like, oh, what if we did this, what if we did this, and you're getting feedback instantly. People are like, oh, that's so funny, but what if we did this? And you're like, yeah, I'm so excited, I can't wait to come back to you with the finished product. And then you go, at this point, in the Zoom call,
Mhm.
you don't have a walk back to your desk anymore, and then you sit there in silence and you're like, ah, fuck, I gotta make it. That's
Mhm.
the worst part, like, because I can't, then I want to do everything else, and then I have the like, I'm gonna go up and make myself a cup of coffee, and then I'm gonna go out and there's things I have to do with the horses. I gotta like muck out some stalls, and then I'm gonna drag with the ATV. What else am I gonna do? And then I'm like, oh well, now that I did that, I probably should clean a little bit. Oh, I should make myself lunch, and then you do like 100 other things. And you sit down again, you're like, oh, I gotta make the storyboard, and that's my worst thing. I don't know if that's more of like a ADHD, there's other things going on I should do, or if that counts as creative block, but I hate the first panel. The first panel is pain. And once you get through the first panel, at some point you're just boarding, but doing the actual first move to make a thing is the worst.
I keep imagining you with a Cintiq on a horse.
I've never done that. I've actually never done that.
That would be a funny stunt to try to do, like see if you can storyboard one scene while you're riding. I feel like that would be a funny thing to film.
I would love, like, that would be something I've thought about if I needed like some sort of professional headshot or something that's not taken by me.
Oh my God, yeah.
Or a video or anything that was professionally done focusing on me. I would love to draw on a horse. So if anyone wants to produce that for anything, I would love to make that happen, because I definitely can do it.
I love it. That's so funny. Well, while we might not have Pinkie on the horse drawing on her Cintiq yet, what we might have is the end of this creative.
Dude, you trying to segue into the end of an episode is like, like sometimes I know that you're doing it. I know that you're in the middle of doing it, but I'm always looking at V like, okay, so how are you gonna do this one?
I'm the worst. And I've praised you in other episodes because you're fucking great. And I'm just like, here's a formula I've seen work before, but I'm just gonna plug random words in it.
All right, partners. V, Pinkie, and I are gonna ride off into the sunset because this is the end of our creative block episode.
Fuck, he's good. God damn it. April Pinkie Davis, thanks for being our guest and sharing your story.
Yeah, thank y'all. I appreciate it.
And thanks to our listeners. Follow us on Twitter at CRTVBlock, where we ask for drawing prompts and questions to ask our guests. Huge thanks to our editor, Clemens, for editing the podcast, and Marco for helping us produce the show. It's our new producer. Nice and shiny and new.
Yeah, Marco has been doing amazing, taking after Malik. We are so very lucky to have them. If you love our show, then support us on Patreon. Becoming a patron gets you early access to interviews as well as bonus episodes. And guess what? Our new producer, Marco, is helping us kind of reworking that Patreon. So it's a little bit newer and shinier and more amazing. But in the meantime, you know, your support helps us pay for things like the Google Drive and the Zoom and our amazing editor and producers. So, you know, yeah, click the link in the description of this episode. I've been your host, V.
And I was and still continue to be Sean. Keep being creative, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.